Okay, so far we're working from the top and our way downward on our resume, and it's being very easy to scan, right? That's always something we want to always remember, that it's very easy to scan. And now we're into the main body, which is your work experience. And this is the main core thing. In the earlier lesson, when I talked about how how I'll review a resume and how quickly I do it, and what I'm kind of things that are popping out that I'm looking for. I'm glancing at all these other things to get that from the summary or title or whatever it might be, your core skills. I'm trying to get that initial picture, but then I'm going to look a little closer at work experience. But even when I say we're looking a little closer, we're still talking a second or two. Okay, so I'm not going to read a novel. I'm not going to read a 10-page resume about your wonderful work experience. I need bullet points. I need things that are easy for me to digest and understand. So when you're developing this, my recommendation, of course, is to make it easy on the interviewer, because they're used to looking at your work experience in reverse chronologically, most recent to your past. So in your work experience, you want to have your current or most recent job that you're at the top, as far as what is your most current, and then go backwards from there. And you don't have to go back a long time. You don't have to list every single job ever since you were a little kid and you mowed lawns or you delivered newspapers or whatever it might be. Just go back to what's applicable in, maybe 10 to 15 years max. Again, I don't have time to read like 20 different job history things, maybe like your most current and then like two others, real brief ones, right? So maybe 10 to 15 years max going back. And also on a special note around like freelance and consulting, you may want to put that on there, or you may not want to put that on there if you have things that are work experience that are outside, the normal kind of your day job type stuff, right? Now, if you have volunteer experience or whatever, that's not work experience. That goes into a different part of the resume coming up at the very bottom of your resume. This is just paid work experience. But you'd say, well, as a freelancer and as a consultant, I get paid, and that's great. And you might say, well, and then also this is why you may want to list it, because you might have applicable skills or really great successes that you want to talk about based on that freelance consulting, whatever you might want to do. So if you're applying for a graphic designer position, you might be doing some extra graphic design on the side, and you get paid a little bit money on that too as well. And you could talk about how you've done web design or graphic design or developed this marketing campaign or these images or logos or whatever. That's the positive side. The negative side is, once again, I'm trying to get a feel for who you are quickly. If I look at your resume and you've got a little bit of your current position, or maybe the one you just left, or if you're let go, and then you have this big long section on your freelance or consulting work on the side, I might look at that and say, this person's really not looking for a full-time job or is committed to it. They're not going to be committed to me or my organization. It seems like they're really committed to their freelancing. Maybe they should just do that, and I'll put the resume in the not go forward pile, right? So just weigh those two. Now, when the whole idea of a resume is to get an interview. So during an interview, you might want to weave in those things or start disclosing that stuff, but don't give them a reason to say no to you just from your resume. So you have to evaluate that in yourself. Is it helpful or is it hurtful? And you can try different things as far as different versions of your resume and see what's working or not working. But understand that perspective from a freelance and consulting listing that work experience. You don't have to necessarily list that. Though you may want to talk about that later in the interview process. Title, company dates, those are standard stuff. What's your title? Don't inflate your title. If you're the director or whatever, you're not all of a sudden the CEO or vice president. So the company, and then like month, dates, year. You don't have to get real detail on that, just so they see how long you've been there. And then in the main part of this too, and when we look at some of these resume examples come up, you'll see some examples, and I'll be highlighting some of these things. But really talking about your accomplishments. You don't want your work experience to just say what you did. That people know what you do, or maybe it's like one sentence or whatever, just that overview. Use the graphic designer type thing. You might say, whatever, senior graphic designer, developing logos and marketing campaigns, and that's it, right? And so they get a feel for it, and then you start listing the detailed accomplishments. You don't have to go and do what does all a graphic designer do, particularly if you're applying for a graphic designer position. They know exactly what a graphic designer does. What you want to do is highlight your accomplishments. You want to say what you did, not that what your job was, but how you succeeded in that position. And because what people want to make that leap from, or that connection from, boy, they were successful in their current position or their previous position, and I want them to bring that to my organization. I'm very excited about bringing them to my organization and to my team to help them, help us, right? So be very results oriented. What were some things that, especially measurable results? I'll beat this to death. Sorry, but it really works and it's really impactful. If you're looking for that, a sales position that, you beat your quote of 10 years in a row by 20%. Graphic designer, right? Built a whole brand new campaign or developed a whole new image library or whatever it might be for the organization and did that ahead of the deadline by 30 days, or a project that you completed ahead of schedule, or a project that was successful. And what was the final results of that project being success? Did you launch a new product? Did the product take off? If you're, on the development team, if you're a coding person, whatever, programming, talk about those results that you accomplished in here. Very simple, bullet pointed out, very easy to scan and read, and highlight those accomplishments. So it's less basics of the job you did and more about the results that you accomplish and your accomplishments. So, for example, with this accountant, if we're looking at an accounting position, just a basic description is that I'm a general ledger accountant, or I did the monthly general ledger. Now, in accounting, there's different, disciplines like cost accounting and others. So, okay, if you do the general ledger, I know you're more of a managerial accountant. But if I'm hiring for that, you'd probably put in your skills like GL experience or, whatever. Talk about, like success maybe around that. So with the general ledger, and don't worry, you don't have to know accounting for this example, but instead of saying, I did the monthly general ledger, you could say, reduce the chart of accounts on the general ledger by 15%, reducing a better management reporting. Right? Now think about that. Like, okay, you worked in the general ledger, but then for people in accounting, say, by having a smaller, chart of accounts, we were able to report our results better. And if I'm a hiring manager, certainly maybe the boss's boss, I'll be like, ooh, I like that. Because our chart of accounts, are listing all these different things that we can put on our general ledger is a mess. Again, you don't have to understand anything I just said there. What you want to understand is like not general ledger, what was the results and accomplishment behind it. Because that's what's going to get people's attention. It's going to move you to that pile of resumes to say, I want to set up an interview. And then the interview, what will be even great is they might ask you about, I saw on your resume this reduction of chart of accounts thing. Tell me more about that. And then you get to tell your story and tell your story about how great you are as an accountant or whatever position you're looking at. So the work experience, core component, certainly the thing you want to spend a great deal of time, reverse order on those. We're going to look at some examples, but the key thing on that is that, again, it's got to be easy to read and scan, not big, dense, long paragraphs. Make it easy to read and scan.